Jeff Voss last updated 1500, December 5, 2017. Building owner William Yates says a tenant decided not to move into his High Street premise after learning about uncertainty surrounding the masonry. Building owners are confused by overlapping legislation covering earthquake strengthening and a lack of ownership by regulators. Despite Marlborough being high-risk under new regional earthquake risk definitions, only 2 buildings were identified as needing to be checked under a short-term unreinforced masonry policy prompted by the Kaikoura earthquake. Neither the Ministry of Business, Innovation and Employment, which instigated the masonry checks, nor the Marlborough District Council, which carried out the checks, were clear on how the 2 buildings were chosen. Meanwhile, many more buildings that could be considered as having unreinforced masonry were business as usual. Read more. Tenants unaware flats need earthquake strengthening as they go on the market. Facades to be checked for earthquake risk. List of streets with unreinforced masonry show they surround CBD. Owner of one of the 2 buildings identified was also still waiting to be told if side brick walls were considered unreinforced masonry. The Criterion Hotel, owned by Deputy Mayor Terry Sloan. William Yates owned a heritage-listed building at 62 High Street and met with ministry officials at a meeting chaired by council building offices in March. Deputy Mayor Terry Sloan, owner of the Criterion Hotel, the second Marlborough building, was also at the meeting. Yates said he sought clarification on a brick side wall at his property. In addition to the masonry frontage, there was a heated debate about that and other matters, and I was told someone would come back to me about the brick wall. Nobody has, Yates said. He said there were a number of brick walls in Blenheim that could pose a risk, even though they did not face the street. Yates' building was issued a Section 124 notice requiring an engineer to sign off on the masonry reinforcement or ensure it was strengthened by March next year if it could not be signed off. On the one hand, we're told it's engineer-driven and we don't need resource consents, and the council knows we have an engineer on to it, and on the other hand I find my building depicted in media as though it could be dangerous, Yates said. Cost me a tenant of national standing. I'm trying to preserve a heritage building. There's not many of them left in Blenheim. Marlborough's building control manager Bill East said his department was required to follow up on buildings identified with potential masonry risk, but they had not made the choice about which buildings. The identification of Yates' property as requiring investigation was a choice made by MBIE, not the council, East said. The unreinforced masonry process was a creation of the government, not this council. East said both buildings had previously been strengthened and future reports might confirm both buildings did not require an upgrade. East said other confusion around seismic strengthening came from the mix of the old earthquake-prone building policy and the new Earthquake-Prone Building Amendment Act, and he had staff unraveling that. He said the ministry was slow in getting documentation out and also in providing guidance to date. He referred further questions to the ministry, as the creators of seismic strengthening rules. Ministry spokesman John Falung said the ministry provided criteria for local councils to identify streets with unreinforced masonry buildings that posed the greatest risk to public safety. The criteria related to the level of foot and vehicular traffic, and the number of unreinforced masonry buildings. Local councils identified buildings in their areas which are high pedestrian and high traffic routes, Falung said. He said the securing requirement applied to street-facing facades and parapets only. Other buildings with unreinforced masonry elements are likely to be captured by the System for Managing Earthquake-Prone Buildings in the longer term, Marlborough District Council identified 2 streets that met those criteria. Falung said the ministry administered the relevant legislation for the System for Managing Earthquake-Prone Buildings and the securing requirement. It also administered the central source of guidance for the building regulatory system, he said. Local councils are responsible for responding to media, building owners and the public. MBIE provides the framework and support, but councils are responsible for their locality, Falung said. The Marlborough